This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Andy Campbell for the first time. Welcome to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
Doing well, man. Thanks very much, Pam. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, it's great to talk to people from around the world. We've been podcasting since 2016, over 1,200 episodes of live in the moment interviews with people. And before we get to the heart of your story, I always ask every guest a couple of questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
What motivates me is that along the way, during some of my darkest moments, kind of the dark nights of the soul, there were people who gave me encouragement and told me about their experiences, and that gave me the motivation to keep going when I really felt too desperate to keep going. So I want to do the same thing for other people. I want to take difficult circumstances that I've been through and use those to encourage people not to quit, give them confidence that they can continue on.
Yeah, to pay it forward. I mean, life is it. Everybody wants to live like this ideal life, but a lot of times, the world gives you like storms to go through. And, if you're a captain, you probably need to have gone through some stormy weather. You don't want a captain that's never gone through stormy weather.
No, it's not a lot of faith in that. I like my pilots to have been through a couple of really difficult circumstances, so they're
Yeah,
calm. You want your ship's captain to have been through those rough seas.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true.
And I'm a cancer survivor myself, level 3 sarcoma back when I was 27. I'm 57.
Yeah,
Uh,
congratulations on the long duration, man.
Yeah, well, it was a pivotal moment. It was kind of like this moment that I think you'll probably, understand that when that happens, there's this crucible moment. And then if you survive it, like, which, we as survivors, then you're like, well, if I can survive cancer, what else can I do? And I try to apply it to like why I'm doing what I'm doing now. Like the pre-cancer version of myself, wouldn't have been on the mic. I wouldn't be playing music in front of people. I wouldn't be doing a lot of things that I do today because I said, well, I got a permission structure. Now
Yeah,
I gave myself permission that I can go expand. And I
yeah.
think that's what can happen. You hope it doesn't happen to make you do that, but that can
No,
happen.
look, I think that's one of those things where we take every challenge has an opportunity to make something out of it. I don't think they happen to give us those opportunities, but we can. It's kind of like the red car theory,
Yeah.
it's like, well, if you're in a challenge and you look for an opportunity, there's probably one there. And
Mhm.
you go through these things, and I do think it can either break you or it can make you believe that there are things you can do that you didn't think you could do before.
Yeah, I think you can take it from to have more of like a mindset that's gonna be expansive rather than somebody's like a limited belief system where they just can't go past their own glass ceiling.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's absolutely true. Yeah, there's most of the ceilings that we encounter are in our mind. They're not really in the universe. They're not in our world. They're just
mhm.
in our mind.
Yeah, it's really like the thing is like I'm as part of my job every day is I'm a software guy, and we can kind of retrain the system. We can reframe it. We can rebuild it. We can totally tear it down and come up with a whole new paradigm. And
Yeah,
so a lot, it's remapping the system to understand like a new structure. Like we call it a structural change. So
yeah.
the change is like we're adding new columns to the table, new
Well,
columns
and
to the foundation.
that's a great way to look at it, because I think I haven't thought of it in those terms, but your life can either be a series of waterfalls, or either you can build a DevOps life, and you can just inject new code into it every day if that's your choice. And
Yeah,
I
it's
think
agile
I think that
mindset.
is a coast. I mean, I think that's a choice that we can make, right? That we're not gonna just have a series of waterfalls where we have to stay like this for a long period of time and wait for the next revision. That we can just change the code today. We can insert a new instruction set, and we can move on differently.
Yeah, it's like that versus waterfall, like
Yeah.
agile iterative
Yep.
development.
Exactly.
Everybody sees it like as a programmer, software developer, it's like I didn't know something yesterday. Now I know something. So I put out the net version 1.215.
And that's the way I think
That's how you gotta be.
that is I think that's kind of, that's really, I mean, I like this. like this way of looking at it because it is real. Like you can actually create, you know, uh, V4R12.5.7.8. Like you can do that right now.
Yeah, yeah, and you
Yeah.
you can adjust and, like, a lot of people don't realize, like, as a musician, we train, right? We
Yeah.
practice, rehearsal. In the arts, is a lot of rehearsal, and what we start to realize is, like, those things you rehearse for your art, you actually can do for other things.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't realize how much they kind of rote practice, like the athlete, to get that three-point shot. They put like 1,000 hour, 5,000. How many hours did they do to do that? You have to spend the time. If you don't spend the time on your mindset and understanding, like looking glass self, why am I here? What's going on? Ask the hard questions. See if you could you actually, see things in a different way.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody today about something very similar to this, and it was about how do you how do you respond in the moment when something, either devastating or unexpected or really bad happens, and they said, "How do you apply these beliefs that you've incorporated?" And I said, "Well, that's part of it. You have to incorporate them before you need them. You have to
Mhm.
you have to practice it. You have to make it part of your default code, right? It's the
Yeah,
BIOS. It's the thing when everything else fails, I can still boot. Like I can still get back up and run. I might not be running great. I might not be running. I may be in safe mode for a while, but I can still I
yeah,
can
you can
still get
recover.
things functioning, right? And I think that's a lot of it. Like you got to have the beliefs. Um, for me, you got to have the beliefs ready to go when the system crashes, right? When it
Mhm.
comes down, you've got to have a way to come back, could recover, at least recover partially until you can get a full recovery, right?
Yeah, I mean, as a musician, I would state it as like the modal jazz, fusion jazz musician can have this concept of Herbie Hancock talked about this with Miles Davis. There's no bad note, there's an opportunity.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
I actually hit the wrong chord, Miles Davis adjusts his playing to match my chord,
yeah,
and the audience doesn't even know that something happened.
right,
And, fusion jazz musicians or any kind of progressive musician that's in that kinda in the moment, in present
yeah,
moment type of musician, yeah, I understand what the composition was, but I'm not wedded to it 100%.
yeah,
I can adjust to it in real time, and I can read the room. I can read the bass player, read the drummer, read the sax player, and kinda know where I should go at
yeah.
any moment.
Yeah. Yeah, you got a lot of great examples, man, that I'm gonna like take away from this conversation because like one of my beliefs is only be religious about religion. And it kind of goes to what you're saying, which is it's like, look, man, if you're gonna life is in the moment. So don't get too wed to that, sheet music that you thought you were gonna play. Things
Yeah,
may change. Somebody else may strike a different note and you may have to adjust, and there are some things in our lives that we need to hang on to, like, I mean,
yeah,
that matter to us, and we have to treat them with the I guess the respect and uh, the commitment that they desire. But a lot of things through the day are not like that, right? A lot of
mhm.
things. I like that, man. I like that. It is kind of like being kind of an in the moment, almost improvisational
Yeah, well,
kind of artist,
comedians run
right?
into it too,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
comedians and actors, you see a
yeah,
method actor doing a stage play, every night they do it a little different.
yeah.
Every night they might even come up with whole new lines because they're kinda in the character, right? So they say, "Well, I know
Right,
the character in this moment would say this. The last
right.
night it said
Yeah,
that." Well,
yeah,
it's still in the same kinda general area how I think this person's gonna behave, and it's okay, unless
yeah.
you have a director that says it's not.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
no,
life is like that, though, isn't it? I mean, life is kind of like that. I mean, it's. I think it's harder when you're not willing to, be flexible and adjust to the moment. You know.
yeah, I think it's a hard thing, like, when you go through something like you went through for stage 4 pancreatic cancer, the loss of your son, and all the things that those two, like, really heavy things to happen. And some folks, if they don't have a way to recover, they can get down in the dumps and they don't know how to get out. Like, how did you, handle that? Is, one step at a time, or, like, is that what was your process?
Yeah, I think. So over the years, I kind of collected up these, like I would, so I see some people hear words, but I hear pictures, right? When
Mhm.
somebody speaks, it like, I don't really hear words. My brain just starts painting a picture as they, keep talking. And so actually every example you've given, I've been painting a picture of Herbie Hancock, like on stage.
Yeah.
So it's, so it, I would write down these phrases of things that I thought I had observed, like I would see something and you see it over and over again in different ways. And so I would write them down, but I would use like a metaphrase, right? Like I'd use something that represented this picture that was in my brain. And so over time, I kind of wrote down these 15 things that, started out with one, then it was five, then it kind of grew. And I would write down these things that I believed in, and I kind of over time I started calling them my core beliefs. Like they're the things that are at the very base of what I believe. And through a bunch of different circumstances, I found them to be useful in, like through the subsequent stages that happen to us after a big event takes place, you know.
Mhm.
And so whether it was the cancer diagnosis or earlier in life, a number of things that occurred, or my youngest son took his own life when he was 18, and I found him. And so, like you go through these things, and over the years, I just kind of had built them in as kind of my bios, right? And so I think one of the things that I learned was you cannot immediately recover from a significant setback. Like
Mm.
like that, it's an objective that's too big, and then if it's too big, like
Yeah. It's
it'll
not
break you under its
digestible.
weight. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
digestible, and it's
Yeah.
too heavy. It's just too heavy to carry. Like how am I going to do this a year from now? How am I going to do this? And so what I what I think I discovered through those things, through those experiences, was how to apply these beliefs to first just boot up again. Then, I
Mhm.
mean, I'm going to stick with this because it actually is, I kind of like the
Yeah,
way
it's
it
a good
breaks
good
out,
example.
Yeah. But like, how to like just, system crashes, you know, how do I just get past the blue screen of death, right? Like, how do I get back online? And so it's like, okay, well, let me just get the BIOS working, and then I'll just drop into safe mode, and I'll limp until I can figure out what else has to be done, and I'll take all these things kind of one step at a time, and eventually, I may not get back like all the data, so I may not have full recovery, but I'll be in a lot better situation than I am today. I can get the system up and running again. And so I kind of applied that, not in that metaphorical sense, but kind of applied it, worked out that way. So to
Mhm.
me, like in each one of these setbacks, these, I call them setbacks, but in each one of these kind of really devastating moments, I would just kind of default back to that, this set of core, this set of beliefs, like, um, always fall forward.
Mhm.
It was like a way to remind myself, when you get hit so hard that you start stumbling, do your best to fall forward back toward the direction that you were going, right? It's easier to get
Yeah.
back on the path if you're already facing that direction. So it was more like a mental note to just say, I've observed that when people get hit so hard, they lose their sense of direction. That's when they struggle more. So if you're going to get, a circumstance is going to rock your world to the point where you might get distracted or disoriented, the first step before you do anything else, Andy, the first step is orient yourself back toward the direction. If it's not the direction you wanted to go, but back toward the direction you need to go, like just
Mhm.
get directionally pointed where you
Just get
need to
back
go.
to, like, some level, let's maybe not equilibrium, but the point where you're not stumbling.
You're not stumbling, right? Or you're not on your backside. You like
Yeah.
if you're on your backside, roll over, like get your head. It's like a physical description of really just a mental exercise. Like get your head back
Mhm.
in the right direction. You can figure out everything else later. But if you're just wandering around, like, and
Yeah.
that happens in the moment, like you don't know what to do when you find when you find your son and he's taking his own life. Like you don't, but like in that moment, you need something that you don't have to think about that kind of helps you reorient. Okay, this is bad. This is what I need to do. Right. And
Mhm.
so this is just the next step. And so I
Yeah,
found those things
yeah.
to be useful.
That's super I think it's super important because, you don't wanna fall off the cliff. You don't wanna go all the you have to
Yeah.
find a way to get it's like we talked about at the beginning, like a captain's in that ship. He's just gonna let go of the wheel and let it take him wherever? Is he gonna try to so, okay, this is a chaotic moment, but I've gotta stay with some survival base level skills. Like, I gotta keep the ship from sinking.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
and look, if the ship is gonna sink, if you start taking on so much what like there is and another great example, like if you go on ships very often, they drill all the time for every emergency, right? Like, is there
Mhm.
a fire? Do we have to abandon ship? And you're like, abandoned ship. We're like in warm water ocean. There's no storms around. Why are
Yeah,
we practicing? But
you
they're
stuck yeah,
practicing in case, right? Like in
yeah,
case it happens. And so it will be second nature to them. So they're like, yeah, okay, everything's fine. Well, what if that's not fine? What if we have a fire? What if we have to abandon ship? What if we, and you go through all those things because even if you have to abandon ship, you got to make sure you get in the life, into a
yeah.
life vessel.
You have
And
to
if you get
think
in a
about
life
that
vessel, yeah,
that bad thing.
and yeah, everything is about just getting back, then getting help, then getting to shore, then you start thinking about, okay, what am I going to captain next? Like what ship I'm going to go back out on the sea, but what, and so if you were just standing on the deck and you were the captain and you started thinking right then about, the next ship that you were going to
Yeah,
captain,
that's not
like
the right place to
you
be.
could, that's not the right, yeah, it's not the right time, right? And
You have to
so,
be at the right moment the right plan for the right moment,
yeah.
and
And so,
and it's like the preparation, like you said, in terms of, like, your mental agility. I remember I lived in Japan, and they
yeah,
had earthquake drills.
yeah,
I was there for 2 years, and they would do them all the time, and they were very serious, and, like, Americans that were there were like, "Oh, why do we have to do this?" It's like, "Well, I think you need to do this," right? And they had the whole package. They had a helmet, they had some
yeah,
water, and they had a certain level where, like, "Oh, this drill, you just go under your desk with your helmet." But then they had another drill, well, you actually have to get out the building.
yeah.
And then they had another drill, you had to actually go to this park where there was water, so if there was a fire, that you would be in this park with water so you wouldn't get the firestorm. So they had all these levels, and initially, they would just do the one where you're under your desk. Then they did the one where you had to get out the building. Then they had to do the one where you had to go to the park. So it was like steps.
Yeah, well, and we do these things for like visible physical calamities, that we've seen and that we think
Mhm,
might occur, but we don't do them enough internally, mentally to prepare our mind and our spirit, our soul, like our even our physical body for how we're going to react to things, right? And so it's not
mhm,
about just like, whether it's the ship's captain or it's the ship's crew or it's people in Japan doing an earthquake drill. They're doing it mentally for your own mental stability when something happens. That's not being negative and focusing on
yeah,
this negative
it's
thing that could happen. I mean, it's not like the
positive
Japanese are focused, like we're just spending all our time preparing.
for
No,
the
they're
bad days.
preparing for how to survive if it does happen,
Yeah, versus
and
kind of a mindset, like a US mindset, "Oh, I don't need to do that because it
yeah,
doesn't happen that much." Where, in LA, they don't do that at the level I saw in Japan.
yeah,
The
they're not going
amount
to,
of
right?
times that they do the practice routine in Tokyo, I was there for 2 years,
Yeah,
and and I talked to people that were in LA and San Francisco, and they weren't doing it at that level, and
no,
I'm like so I was like, it's not that they're obsessed about it, but they understand the situation, and it's like if you have to try to imagine what are your skill sets to handle what life throws at you? You can't just have this happy everything's gonna be great.
well, it's not going to be great, man. My father used to have this. I think he got it from like the Book of Job. I think that's where he got it from, and it was this thing that was like, I think Job's friends were asking him like, "Why all this bad stuff happened?" And
Mhm,
his answer was, because the rain falls on the just and the unjust. And, if you take that out just a little bit and think about it, rain is falling right now somewhere or in a lot of places all around the planet. It's just
mhm.
not falling on you right now. Okay.
Yep,
It's not falling on you, but it will fall on you. And somewhere else, they'll have sunny days when it's dark and rainy or stormy on you. this is just the universe. Just because it's sunny now doesn't mean you don't patch the hole in your roof,
Yeah.
before it rains. And this is kind of the same thing. It's like, how do you survive these things? And not, I pray to God people don't have to experience the loss of a child, or the loss of a child to
Yeah.
suicide, or, they don't get diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, or, that I pray that no child ever suffers again, sexual abuse, that loved ones, parents don't die way too young in their lives. I hope all those things don't happen, but we are guaranteed that some things will happen.
Yeah.
And
You have
so,
to have some kind of skills, like life skills,
yeah,
management. It's
yeah.
like
I
you
mean,
can
you could
manage
lose
what
your
you
job
got.
and it can be devastating. You can try venture and it doesn't work out. Like, you still need to have the ability and an understanding. Look, you're going to get knocked backwards. These things are going to happen, and you're going to get disoriented for a time, and it's going to be very disappointing. When I got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, man, I cried like a baby. Like, I fell into, like, I was 53 years old. I didn't want to die. And I sure
Mm,
didn't want to die from something like pancreatic cancer. Like, I'd seen people that's
that's a bad
I
one,
don't
yeah.
want, I don't want to do like that. And then they
Yeah.
said, like, well, it's like 6 months, and I'm just now about to cross over 7 years. And but at the time, like, I was completely devastated. Like, I was going to leave my wife, all four of my children. Like,
Mhm.
I kind of thought I had time to do some things, and so it's okay to get, like, you have a setback at work, a venture doesn't work out, a relationship doesn't work out, and you get, you're devastated by it. You get set backwards. But you do need to have some stuff inside you that you have thought about, that you've incorporated, so that when that happens, you don't stay in that spot too long.
Yeah,
It
you don't
took
wanna
me
stay
that.
with that bad loop. Like, I think
No,
sometimes you can get caught up in
yeah,
this loop,
you
and
just
then
don't want it to be infinite, right? You just
yeah,
don't get the infinite loop going.
you don't want that infinite loop because, like, I was around a lot of people when I was diagnosed with cancer when I was 27, there were some people that were taking it like it's the end of the world,
Yeah,
and they kinda put this frame around themselves where they just thought they were almost, like, giving up right at the start,
yeah,
and I was more like a fighter. I'm like, "I got things I gotta do. I'm 27, there's things I need to do." And I started looking forward, and I actually went and got some things like I was a mountain biker, and I went and bought
yeah.
this mountain bike frame before my surgeries, and every week I would go buy a part for it. I said, "When I get back, I'm gonna take this bike on the trail and
There
use it
you
as
go.
my rehabilitation
Yeah,
methods." I just had this mindset that was different. I
yeah.
was building toward thinking about not I wasn't just thinking about not being here. I was thinking about I'm gonna be here, and I'm gonna be on the trail, and I'm gonna be riding the bike. So it's that mindset thing, right?
It is, man. Have you ever read a book by a guy named Viktor Frankl? It's called Man's Search for Meaning.
I've heard of it. I haven't read excerpts of it, but people have
Yes.
talked about it on my show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really is. There's a lot to take away from it, but one of the things I took away from it was, he said, um, people who did not have, in the camps. That's what he was talking about, in the camps in World War II.
Mhm.
He said, people who did not have meaning in life were guaranteed to die in the camps. They didn't have something to look forward to, like even the bicycle build, right? Like, you got to have something to look forward to. And he said the people who didn't really have, like, a thing that they look forward to, some meaning in their life, something to carry them through that they wanted to do or accomplish afterwards, they were guaranteed to die. That he just saw them. They either died from health problems, or they died from suicide, but they just couldn't make it. And he
Mhm.
said, then there was a group that they did have meaning, and they did intend to live, and they did want to live, and they had something to look forward to, and they still died.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he said there was the 1 in 28 that had meaning and survived. And he said, but if you want this, I'm paraphrasing because this is what I took away from his book. I think he says something similar, but what I took away was this: if you want to have a shot at being the 1 in 28, you better have meaning and struggle for it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you better be, because you may not make it, but at least die with dignity, right? Like,
Yeah.
at least die having put in the effort to stay here and fulfill the meaning that you wanted to. If it's finish a book, I had an old Jeep. I wanted to finish, rehabbing this
Working.
old Jeep, and
Mhm.
and I wanted to be there, to see my children, graduate from college and get into their professions. Like you got to have some, and even if you do, you still may not make it.
Yeah, but at
But
least you
it,
gave yourself some light at the tunnel, if you just say, "I'm at the end of the tunnel,"
yeah,
I was like, I see the light at the end of the tunnel, I'm going toward it, but I still see the light, right? Like, if you're somebody's
yeah.
like, "I'm at the tunnel door and I'm done."
Well, I look, I've dealt with one of the reasons why I created my website was because, and it goes back to what you just said about other people that you saw that got diagnosed, like kind of their mindset. After a while, people would come to me and they'd say, "How are you still alive?" Or they would ask my children or my wife, or they, the doctor, they said, "How's he still alive?" And they would say, "Well, ask Andy, he'll tell you." So that
Right.
was Ask Andy Campbell, or so like that. But what happened is people would call me or they'd email me or I'd talk to them, and I would give them like my protocol for what I was doing. And it was everything I could get my hands on. I went to acupuncture every week, guided imagery every week. All of that was designed to help me get through the toxicity of the chemotherapy and get my energy like flowing through my body right. And because the chemo is destroying everything, right? So it's got
Yeah.
you all out of kilter. And then all the supplements I take on the on-label medications, off-label medications, like everything. Because I have like a three-pronged approach to it. One, I got to give myself enough energy so that I could sustain the struggle, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know,
The
and then
nutrition and supplements and
yeah,
everything. Yeah.
nutrition supplements, your vitamin B's, your vitamin, all the stuff to help your own body kind of keep going. And then the second one was, what can I take? What can I do to limit the cancer source of energy? Like if
Mhm.
it needs energy to grow and to spread and to replicate. So what can I do to help cut off its energy supply? And then the third thing is, what can I do to weaken the cancer cells, even if it's just 0.5% or 1%? If I stack enough stuff, weakening at 1%, maybe I can weaken it 45 or 50%. And then the standard of care and the trial therapies and all that stuff can do their job better, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
so it was like
You have
this
a
approach,
holistic approach, you're looking at everything. I think
everything. Like,
sometimes people have a narrow approach, and they put all
well,
the eggs in
that's
one basket, and then maybe that doesn't work.
that's why I stopped talking to people straight up about it, because then they would hear it and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm not going to do all that." And I was like, "Listen, brother, I'm struggling to keep my own mind in the right
Yeah.
place. I don't have time for you to tell me like you don't have the energy to do it. I mean, I understand it and that's a choice, but don't be throwing that negativity on me."
Mhm.
And so I just created a site and I was like, I'm gonna put everything out there. Go look at it. And so then what I started telling people was, you go read everything I do. You go see it, take a look at it. Then if you want to talk to me, like if you're willing to talk about all the stuff you got to do, then we'll have a conversation.
So
And I
people
think
who
it is.
or have buy-in, you don't
Yeah.
want the people who wanna argue and be, like,
Uh-uh.
naysayers and try to say, like, "Well, why are you doing it? What are you doing?" Like, maybe they
People
wanna
would
ask
argue with
why,
me, fam.
but
People would
arguing,
argue with me. They'd be like, "Oh, I don't believe in acupuncture." I'm like, "But I didn't ask you
that's
what the
great.
hell you believed in. Like, you came to me."
Yeah, it's
You
like,
know?
when you come in, they wanna argue about the process. It's like,
Oh, yeah. I'm like,
there's
people would say, "Well, I don't guided imagery, that's hokey." I'm like, "Well, I'm not here to convince you. You asked me."
it's not a debate. Like, maybe
It's
some
not a
people think it
debate.
is. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the problem. Like, if they come
yeah,
in and they have a closed mind and they wanna, like, argue their point, okay, well, that's a different forum. That's not what you're
yeah,
about.
right. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of people who argue with you about that, but I'm and I think this is I would encourage people to be this way, like, just like you did. If you want to stay here and you want to have a shot at being the 1 in 28, you need to carve out all that negative stuff.
Mhm.
And you know what? People have said to me, they're like, "Wow, that's kind of cold." I'm like, "No, cold is dying. It's not separating myself from the negative energy and focusing what little energy I have on staying alive, because that's what I'm gonna do." So if somebody talks to me about positive things, I'll bring that in. If you're gonna like
It's negative, yeah,
debate
you
me
don't want
over
that.
this stuff, like I'm not gonna do that. And so
It's like
I
the
don't
law of
think that's
attraction.
cold.
Well, it's the law of attraction because, like, you get the law of attraction, like, I'm a musician and, like, the idea of frequencies, like harmony, right? There's
Hmm.
harmony, there's distance, there's discordance, there's noise, right? In music. So
Yeah,
when people are vibing, they tend to be in a harmonious type of frequency.
yeah,
If they're not vibing, they're like a discordance or distortion.
yeah,
So it's kinda like a cacophony.
yeah.
It's not aligning, it's off. you can tell it's off. And maybe what I find is like if you get toward that, that equilibrium or that perfect note, or you're in harmony, you're in perfect pitch, then things are gonna align, and then those things come around.
And
Like,
it takes less energy to be in that state, right?
yeah,
Like it flows better, like everything works. And when it's just off and it's like, man, that's like sucking up too much energy. I don't have the energy to give right now,
yeah,
you know?
I
And
want that.
so I think I would encourage people, like if you're in that, if you're going through a really difficult time and you've set your mind to, I'm going to get out of this, or I'm going to give this everything I've got to get out of this. It's not rude and it's not cold. And I mean, to like separate yourself from things that are that discordance that's sucking energy from you, because that's what it does.
Sometimes you end up with, with that law of attractions, like where you are in the present moment, these other people that were with you in the previous moment maybe don't fit this moment anymore. And that's
That's
okay.
100% true.
And that's okay. But it's like I can't be in the space that's actually not gonna move me forward or be where I am.
Right. Right.
So that's I'm not, I don't want to get into a fight. I want to get into an argument. It's like it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, move on.
Well, and I mean, you get in these spaces and you got to prioritize where you're at that moment, and you do. You need where energy is coming towards you, not being pulled out of you,
Yeah. You don't wanna
because
feel
you
yeah.
don't have a lot of energy at that point,
Yeah, you
like
don't have energy to waste. You don't wanna be
right.
like it's dissipating, you're losing strength, you're losing direction, you're losing cohesion, and it's like you have to have this kind of fortitude to really, be an advocate for your own survival,
And you're
and
going to have to be an advocate
yeah,
for your own survival.
you're the
Yeah.
one that has to do it the most, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and sometimes when you can't, like, there got to be a point during the chemotherapy and the treatment where I wouldn't say I was not ready to die or give up, but there was a time when I decided that I had to stop doing chemotherapy. I'd done a lot
Yeah,
of it,
you just
and
hit the top level of what you could take.
yeah, and it was at that point it had been killing the cancer, but then it got to the point where it was killing me faster than the cancer,
Yeah, yeah, you have to
and
make a choice.
yeah, and I was just like, I'm done. Okay. And at that point, there were no other therapies, right? It was for
Mhm.
for for stage 4 pancreatic cancer, it was this one therapy, and that was pretty much it. I mean, there were variations of that one therapy, but that was it. And at first, my family physician was like, "Nah, you can. That's fine. You can stop the chemotherapy. We're going to do some other stuff." And he finally talked me into doing like this long-term fasting, and I did like a 10-day water only fast, and then I did a 5-day. He was trying to get
Mhm.
me to 20, but physically I couldn't make it. And then we got through that, and I was doing better. And then my wife, my oldest daughter, found a trial at the University of Pennsylvania that happened to be like specifically for people like me. Like it had all the conditions, and I
Oh,
met all the
you
criteria.
fit the
Right?
study. You fit the
Yeah,
study
yeah,
exactly.
fit the study perfectly, right? Like they needed somebody young enough, well, 53, for pancreatic cancer, that was young enough. Well, I guess by then I was maybe 54, but
Mhm.
I need to be young enough to do it. I needed to have had a good response. I needed to still be getting a good response, although I'd
Mhm.
done too much chemo, and then I had to have something else. Anyway, I met all the criteria. So my daughter found it. And then I was like, okay, I mean, I'll try it. And my wife called the UPenn, and the first response she got was they said, no, the trial's closed, and he's not a good candidate for this other one. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm out. And sometimes you need these other people who aren't done and out. And that's why you need to move away from the people who are sucking energy from you and be with the people who want you here. They'll give up their energy to backfill what you're missing. And so
Mhm.
my wife says, "Nah, we're not done yet." And I said, "No, I'm done." She's like, and not nearly as nice as I'll say it now. She was like, "No, you need to leave the room. I'm taking care of this." And so, I was, but at that point I was exhausted. I was like, whatever. And she called back to the UPenn and got another person on the phone. And within an hour, literally, I think it was within an hour, uh, I had the invitation. Like that was on a Tuesday, I think. and I was on a flight to UPenn Monday morning,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
I was
that's
in the
so
trial.
she fought for you, she did the
Yeah.
work.
And so sometimes, like, that's one reason why you need to make sure that you've got the right people around you,
Yeah,
that'll fight for you when you don't have the energy to go,
yeah,
because,
you gotta have the right yeah, 'cause I remember, like, with my cancer, I had, this one doctor that wanted me to go to a trial. They had a 50% chance that it was a placebo,
yeah.
and I had a level, like, 3 sarcoma, I had a stage 3, and if I was not really getting it treated, it could go to a stage 4.
Mhm.
So I had to look at that and I said, "Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me because I got a 50-50 shot they're not doing anything."
Right. Right.
So I just said and so and I had people around me that said, "Yeah, that's right," and and they helped me, I mean, helped me make that decision, but I was like, leaning toward it, but I wasn't just buying into whatever this doctor said
Right. Right.
without challenging it and without having some people around me saying, "Yeah, that's a good idea to go get another opinion, get a
Yeah.
couple more opinions." You know?
Yeah. And you did, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I ended up doing a different strategy, and I'm here because I think I did that because I think it was a they said it was gonna metastasize more, so, I mean,
Yeah. 100% it would. Yeah. And I think, yeah, I mean, you need, yeah, all of this kind of fits into this mold of, um, having these beliefs that, like a belief, you need people around you. You need some people that you can rely on, and you need some people that, you would carry through hard times, and they can kind of you know, help you limp along through hard times. And then you need to get some good advice. And I think it's always good to have people that care about you. And if you feel like you don't have anybody around that cares about you, the creator cares about you. So,
Mhm.
you always got at least one entity in the universe that cares about you.
But I
And
thought I found it interesting, I don't know if this happened to you, but there were people around me that there are some of my friends that I would have expected it would be there like 100%, and there were people I thought, "Oh, these people wouldn't be there," and some of the people I thought that weren't gonna be there were there, and the people I thought that were, they weren't.
no,
So
it happens every time, man. And it's like every time you go through something, a different group either one group disappoints you, and one group exceeds your expectations. Like they show up like that. And I guess it's because some circumstances people just aren't equipped to deal with, and then
mhm,
these people that you wouldn't really count on, it turns out that they were equipped to try to jump in and help you with that. And yeah, I think I've found that in every situation. There's
mhm.
these, and so what I've done, fam, is I've just decided not to be as judgmental about that, and I just look at it and say, I've probably done the same thing to somebody inadvertently,
Yeah,
but
I
I
think
think
it's
it's
kinda
just they can't.
yeah, I think mortality is a hard thing. Like, if somebody runs into somebody that had something real heavy, some people are equipped to handle the heaviness,
Yeah,
right? And some people don't know until it happens, and they probably surprise themselves. It's like, they probably would have thought, "Oh, yeah, if somebody gave them a hypothetical, it's, oh, I'd be there," but then when it hits them, they find out they're actually not equipped. And that's kinda like wherever they are. I kinda looked at it as like, well, they are on where they are on this kinda scale, and, that's where they are on the spectrum, and I can't
yeah.
really control where they are on the spectrum. They're gonna be where they are. Maybe we'll get back to each other, or maybe we won't, or whatever, but, like, that's where they were, that's it. It's like, okay, I don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's the way I was I would get really angry about that, and I'd feel like, man, that's kind of disloyal, or like what the hell happened? Like, you were supposed to, be here, and they're not. But I mean, look, human beings are going to human, and uh, I think there's just some things that people are uncomfortable with, and I think what happens is they imagine them. They almost it almost kind of transposes onto them, and like I said, the mortality and everything they got to go through, and then they're just like, "Man, I can't handle that," so they
It's
got
too
to get away
heavy.
from it.
Yeah, especially if
Yeah,
you think about it, like, I'm a 27-year-old hanging around a bunch of, under 30 people.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the last thing they wanna think about is something like terminal.
right.
And
They don't want to think about that.
they just like, "Oh, I can't be in that space, it's, like, bringing me down." And
Yeah,
after I felt like, okay, well, they just don't wanna get brought down. It's like, fine, that's where they are, you know? I wasn't, like, totally fine with it, but I'm like, I realized then,
I think you just have to accept it,
yeah,
like it's, I mean, I wish it was different, but you just got to accept it. That's what they can do. And that's where they're at. Doesn't make it any easier because then, like we might feel left alone, like, hey, is anybody going to, like you're really not going to step up and help me carry this load, like I'm not,
yeah.
but the thing is you don't need people who can't carry the load. You need
People
the
can.
right people to show up
Yeah,
who can
if
carry the
you
load.
yeah, like 15 people and like 2 can carry the load, with the 2, that helped you like that, that's what you needed at the time.
That's right.
You
So
can
do
be like
so don't
thankful
think of
because
it,
you
don't
needed
spend your time
13.
thinking negatively about the 13. Spend your time being thankful to God the 2 showed up, you know?
Yeah. I think that's like, that's the right wrong way to think about it, because then you're gonna bring negative energy, and you're gonna get resentful, and
Yeah.
then it's like and you don't need to be in that negativity space.
No, at
So
all.
that's where you have to kinda do some. I had some Eastern kinda practices
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
doing some, breathing
Oh,
exercises and
yeah.
tai chi and chanting and, meditation that helped to, get my blood pressure down, get me, thinking about things. Like, your mind is so powerful, at least
Oh,
from
yeah.
Eastern philosophies,
Oh,
that
yeah.
if you start really focusing and saying, "I will be healthy," and you believe it, and you start pushing it through your meditation, it can actually help, and it's
Oh, yeah.
really powerful how much you can affirmations can work.
Look, there's a really good book about, man, I can't remember the name of it right, but it's about the placebo effect. The author's name is Jane, Jain is her last name. And, and I remember I'd read this book and I was talking to my oncologist about doing acupuncture, and because they were kind of like, "How are you getting these results? Like, how are you continuing to do these treatments? Most people, can't do this much of this treatment." And I said, "Well, one of the things I'm doing guided imagery every week, and I'm doing acupuncture." And he told me, he's like, "Well, most of my patients are on this one medical plan, and I don't think that medical plan covers acupuncture." And
Yeah,
so I said, "Why don't you just give them a chance? Like, let them make that decision. Well, you're not their financial advisor. Maybe there's other things they're doing that they'll swap out, but like, why don't you tell them?" Because my family physician, that's how I got hooked up on it. He told me, he calls me right after I got
wow.
diagnosed, and he says, "Hey, man, what are you willing to do?" And I said, "I'm willing to do whatever. What do you got in mind?" He said, "Well, we're going to start out. How about we start out with acupuncture? Because there's a lot of studies showing how it'll help clear toxins from your body and it help give you energy, and you need energy
Yes,
to
a lot
keep
of
going."
history in that, yeah.
So I did it. And then 2 weeks later, he's like, "How about guided imagery?" I'm like, "Sign me up." And so I was telling this oncologist, well, he's really a chemologist because that's all he knew how to do was chemo. He didn't really know how, I mean,
Mhm.
he might have known radiation, but he didn't know, he wasn't like a studier of, like,
Other practices.
a practice of studying, cancer. He was just like doing his
He's
thing.
a niche guy, he's, like,
Yeah.
narrowly focused, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I just treat it. I don't try to do anything about it. I do the chemo. I mean, he would disagree with that, but that's my experience, okay? And so I was talking to him about acupuncture, and finally he just goes, "Andy, listen, what if all this acupuncture stuff is just in your mind?"
Still works.
I looked at him and I said, "Brother, the mind is the most powerful thing that we have to work with, and isn't that the point?
Well, that's the whole point of the Eastern philosophy, like, when I was
Isn't
in
that the
Tokyo,
point that it's
that's
in
the
my
point.
mind?"
The
You
point
know?
is that their mind is super powerful, we don't fully even understand it today, we're trying to map it out.
Yeah.
They're finding that a lot of the Eastern practices, like the acupuncture and, like, other meditation and other
Yeah.
tai chi, it does have positive effects.
Oh,
They
yeah.
can actually see it doing things, and people could, "Oh, it's hokey," or it's this foo-foo. It's like, well, that's because, like, if you put that spin on it, then it's not gonna help you. But if you
Well,
actually
I mean, I think that, like, let's just stay on the cancer thing or a health thing for a little bit. I mean, I think, why would I limit myself from any of these things?
Yeah.
Why would, I do believe, I mean, we now can see with 8K technology, you can see, um, that not all transmissions go from organ to brain or from brain to organ. That a lot, most of the communications in your body between organs actually happen organ to organ. It's your kidney talking to your liver, talking to your
Hmm.
heart, like it's giving instructions without ever going through your brain. But if you're going to release, like if your brain sees something it needs to do, it has the ability to release chemicals and amino acids and proteins and all kinds of stuff to go help your organs do things. So why would I ever shut off that option that my mind, you know, could
Could assist
release
in
certain
your own
things that would
healing.
then be helpful to the Western medicine? I'm not saying like I'm not going to not do,
Yeah.
like the chemo
It's
or
not
the radiation.
all or nothing.
Yeah,
It's not one. The problem I think a lot of people in the Western mindset is they think it's all or nothing. If I
yeah,
use some Eastern practice, I'm only doing that.
right,
It's more of a holistic approach where you're trying multiple things. You could be doing stuff for some indigenous culture from Central America. You could be doing
yeah,
something Native American culture from here, like something that, Cherokee did, right?
yeah. Look,
You could find all kinds of things, but it doesn't mean you weren't doing the chemo or weren't doing radiation or you didn't do the surgery. You can have everything happen, but you could do it all.
as a matter of fact, I think in all these, all these setbacks, these really difficult events, these painful things, I think you need to do all those things. Like you need to do all the things you can to help your whole system, your mind, your body, your soul, your spirit, like you got to do everything you can to help all those components work because you are like you are a system yourself. So
Mhm.
you're not a compilation of 100 individual things. You're one thing with 100 different parts, and that's and so like you can't just go treat the liver, treat the pancreas. Like you got to treat the whole body. You got to think of it
The
as
whole
one
body.
thing.
Yeah, that's the thing where people
Yeah,
forget about the nutrition, they forget about the physical, fitness, they forget about your mental. It's like pillars. There's a pillar to human being. You got a
yeah.
spiritual pillar, you got a heart, soul pillar, you got, physical pillars, you got, internal, and you could get into the people with that think about other aspects, from Indian culture and, all these different points on the body that you could go into, the chakras.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and so but a lot of that stuff is really old, right? And it's
yeah.
human beings, the ancients had a lot of knowledge and, it's not you shouldn't throw away what they built, right? You should look at what they did on top of what we know and try, like, as much as you can, which is where you can actually, you know, put yourself through. But if you can get the fortitude to do like what you're saying, you did the max chemo, you looked at the acupuncture, you looked at other things, like you were looking for every possibility to keep yourself here.
Look, I take it may be too much. Who knows? My liver and my kidneys are still holding up, so I still do it. But I've done, I mean, still do acupuncture, guided imagery, Reiki, um, hypnosis, I mean, all those things like to engage my mind and kind of, to me, it's like working back to try to integrate these different components, because I
Mhm,
think they're obviously out of alignment and something's not, some part of it's not working. And look, I enjoyed a very party oriented lifestyle. I have enjoyed myself in life.
mhm.
That means I probably, wasn't in the best, you know, integrated alignment of all things, And so with the cancer, that was one of the things that, I decided to do was, I might not make it, but while I'm still here, I want to do my best to kind of put all these things back together again, kind of get them aligned. And so it was all those practices. It was, when I talk about like this the stuff I do, like but my liver and kidney are still holding up. I do I probably take every day right around 35, 40 different supplements, on label medications, and off label medications. It's probably right in that. Well, it's right, maybe 40, maybe a little more. So it's probably in the range of you know 50 to 60 capsules and tablets, pills a day that I take on top of all the other stuff. And it all fits into everything I do fits into one of those three categories, right? It's either designed to give me energy. It's designed to cut off the fuel supply to the cancer, or it's designed to help the regular therapies work. And I'm still in a cancer trial. You know, I'm still in this cancer trial. I'm still on the medication that I've been on for 6 years. So I put all of that around that.
Yeah.
And
Well, that
because
makes
that,
a lot of sense.
yeah, I mean, one of the things, I mean, I thought to myself, you know, I think we were lied to as children because, like, every time there was a monster in a movie, it was like there was this silver bullet that killed it, or there was that
You
one,
always do the
you
one
know,
thing. You're
there
always
was the
looking for one
one
thing.
thing,
Thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
that did
One
it. And I was like, that's not my experience. My experience is when the monster shows up, you got to hit it with like a lot of stuff at one
There's a
time,
lot.
a
You
lot.
have to keep on going after it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And so, and you still might not make it out. Maybe the monster wins, but you know, I want to leave a mark on it. You
Well,
know,
yeah. Well, you gotta put your best effort into, you know, I look for little wins all the time, and I think everybody always wants to go from 0 to 100, but if you can think it's like, if I can have a win, right? And it doesn't have to be the big wins, it's the little things that you can build on, and maybe part of it's being like a musician is we go through a lot of trial and error. We have tons of stuff sitting on the cutting room floor, right?
hmm
We go through a lot of iterations before anybody even sees anything or hears anything, and it's because, like, we have to go through it to get to it.
right.
And that process is like, I'm not gonna say, "Oh, I had 99 versions of this song before the version 100 is the one that actually worked." Every step I took to get there was necessary to get there,
That was
right?
part of the
Part of
100th
the
version,
process. I
right?
think a lot of people want to just like, "Oh, what's the quick fix? What's the quick thing?" And there's
Yeah,
no real quick fix when you're in that kind of process. I've talked to, like, actors, film directors, creative people. It's like, there's a lot of work. And everybody today you see on the net is the people want to get, "Oh, I would do it in 5 steps. I want to get it here real quick. I want to, it's like, I'm just gonna happen, gonna get the $1,000,000 like right now." It's like, really?
yeah.
It's like it takes a lot of work.
Well, it's like I think that's where that saying "slowly at first and then all of a sudden" comes from, right? Like everybody
Yeah.
sees the all of a sudden part,
Yeah.
and they're
They
like,
think
"Oh,
that's it.
look, that's it," and they're like, "No, bro, this been going on for like a long time. Like I've been grinding to get through this thing. I just was determined not to give up. I persevered through all this stuff, and now you think this is all there is because you saw the last couple days, you saw the output,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
so the
and
last 3 months or 6
yeah,
months, right? But it
right,
was the 15 years before that that
right,
got you ready to be able to do
100%,
it in 3 months, and people think it's that 3 month. It's like you're not looking at the time continuum in the right way,
right.
and people are thinking because they go, "Well, they did this in 6 months." They did like 20 years in 6 months.
That's right. Yeah. 20 years plus 6 months, you know,
Yeah,
and they're like, "Well,
you
how can I do this?" And it's like just what you said, like, well, this outcome is the culmination, and you think it's the culmination of 6 months, but to get this outcome, you gotta do what I did for 20 years. And they're like, "I ain't doing that. I'm
yeah,
not
well,
no,
most
no, no,
people
no.
won't do
I
it,
just
and you
wanna know
wonder
how."
why.
Yeah, "Just give me the step so I can have this," you know, like what you got right now. And it's
So
like,
how's that
"No."
working? Like,
Like,
how many of these things have you gone to? How much
yeah,
money have you given to these people?
yeah, yeah,
And, like,
it's
maybe because you're giving them the money that they're in the success place, but, like, what did you get?
yeah,
You know?
it's not. You know, they always tell you, like, in economics, like, there are no free lunches, and it's true. You're not gonna find anything that happened right now that is caused by right now. Everything that's happening right now is a culmination of everything that's happened before. So the only
Yeah,
way you can get to right now is all the stuff that's happened before. Like, so there is no one silver bullet, there is no quick fix. And I think that's another thing. Like, you know, people go through whatever the difficulty is that causes you to either become hopeless or desperate or you're unsure. That's part of it, man. Just settle in and start the process of working your way back, right? Just start the process of working your way back. Don't, it's not going to happen today. You know, my son
yeah,
passed away 4 years ago, and for some reason, so he died in June, and so like that week of June, it's for the preceding 3 years. Obviously, the first time we went through it was horrible, and the second time was horrible. But we learned something. Like we figured out that the build up to the day is always worse than the day.
mhm,
And then that happened on the third year, and then this fourth year it was just worse. Don't know why. Don't know what was worse. Couldn't have no idea what next year will be like. But it started sooner. It lasted longer. It just felt it felt a lot heavier this year than it did last year. But I know when we're in it. My wife and I talk about it. We talk about it with our children. We will get like you just have to keep going. Don't make any decisions. Don't make any big decisions while you're going.
Yeah.
You just have to know that this is going to take time, and there is nothing you can do right now to make this go away.
Yeah,
And
it
it's
can't
not
quit.
going to kill you. You're
Yeah.
just going to wish it would, but it's not going to kill you. And so you just got to work your way through it. And I think if Frankl talks about people in the camps who had hope, and they would hope, and then when like they would hope the Americans would show up soon, they would hope that somebody would let them out. They would hope that they would be out by, by Christmas Day. They would hope they would be out by. And he says all those people died because as
Mhm.
soon as that thing did not happen, they
They
lost
lost
hope,
hope. They lost
right?
hope,
So
yeah.
because they needed meaning to sustain their hope, right? But they put all their hope in an event that might not occur. And I think that's like when we go through that time of the year, I remind myself and I work to remind my family, it's like, don't hope it'll get better.
Mhm.
We have a reason to keep going. Just understand that over time, we will get to the other side of June. And then, we'll deal with that when it happens. But I think a lot of people, when they're in these situations, they want it to happen. They want to get out of it. And I get
Mhm.
it, like you want to get
Yeah.
out of it. I want to get out of it.
Mhm.
I wish I never had to live with I still go for scans every 4 months. I get blood work done every 30 days. I'd love to not do that.
Have
I'd
to
love
do
to
it.
not take the supplements and not have to do anything. I just want to have like kind of a carefree existence, and not wonder about all these things and not worry about what the next scan's going to hold. But the truth is, I'll get through it. Like that's the circumstance. And so you just kind of have to take a little bit of a longer perspective and persevere through your difficulties. The main thing is don't quit. That's the
Yeah.
biggest thing. Don't quit.
It's like, if you're living in the moment, um, it's like the present moment, you have to kinda deal if you have the preconceived notion of that you want it to be X, but you're not actually paying attention, you're not actually like, when you read the room, you have to read that moment. If you read that moment and you reject it, like, out of hand, it's like, you don't actually read what's happening now, you want it to be something else. Rather than learning maybe as a Buddhist, sometimes we feel like this, well, we have this understanding that things are kinda mapped out, they're gonna happen. So
Yep.
when you're in these moments, they're supposed to happen, so you shouldn't be, like, lamenting about why it's happening. You need to actually be in it and understand what's happening and kinda read the moment.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't wanna read the moment they're in if it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. And a lot of it doesn't feel good, man. A lot of
But
it
there's
feels
some of this
terrible.
necessary
Yeah.
to get to the next moment is as an artist, we take a lot of that stuff that doesn't feel good, and it becomes our art.
That's right.
And so we actually are thankful for the things that we go through, not that we wanna go through the bad things, but the fact that we learn how to process them and turn them into something of beauty or
Yep.
art is something like, well, we have to live through these things to get to this art, so it's supposed to happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, the way one perceives the path that they're on and how they're going to sustain themselves is incredibly important to get through it. Like you got to be able, I think the most important thing is to have the perspective that you can get through it and that as painful as it is right now, you will continue to persevere. Right. I mean, I'm sure it's that way in music. I'm not a musician, but I'm sure
Yeah,
like, you get to those points where you're frustrated and you're about to just kind of give up and then you don't. And then eventually like it turns and, the
just
art
magic. The
becomes
happy
magic, right?
accident. Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
just happy accidents that happen, right? You can
Yeah.
try to control it, but when you let go the reins, as any artist gets over the time, and I think it applies to life. When you let go of the reins and you actually live in the moment,
Right.
then magical things can happen, and you're like, wow. If you let that possibility exist and don't try to control it, if you take the fact that you've got the skills you've built, You've built certain skills, you've built understandings, you might have core beliefs, but you have to actually, there are things you won't know what's going to happen. Everybody
Well,
wants to
we
know.
don't know anything that's going to
Yeah,
happen,
you have
right?
no
And
idea, but you're trying to control it, and that's the problem.
yeah, well, and I think, yeah, I mean, like, I guess Buddha would say, like, your attachment to it is your problem, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's why you have these feelings and these emotions, because you're attached to that thing that you shouldn't be attached to it
That's
anyway.
yeah, that's it.
Um, I think it's, yeah, we have the opportunities. One of the few choices that we can make is how we're going to respond to it, right? How we're going to respond to those moments. And I think there is a lot to be said for, so like I have this view that, uh, one of my beliefs is that equations are constant, but variables are constantly changing.
Mhm.
And so, like I majored in finance in ages ago in school, and I've always enjoyed finance because, like, the mathematics of it, because the equations always work, right? Like
Mhm.
the equation, the variables, you can change the numbers in the variables, but the variables in the equation sum to something, right? Like, and they
Yes.
will always give you a correct summation. You just decide what variables you're going to put in it, and or what the numbers are that you're going to place in the variables. And I think life is like that,
Yeah.
conversely to like how you kind of get through it in that moment. We should not mistake that the summation of our life is what the summation of the equation is in that moment. Because if you continue on, if you'll persevere, like with the way you describe the art and making music, if you can persevere through that, the summation of that equation will absolutely change. The variables, you will have changed the variables. And so while your life's equation works the same, like all of our lives equations, the equation is constant.
Mhm.
We have the decision to change the variables or to give time enough for the variables to change, because then the summation of your life changes. So the summation of your life is not the negative situation you're in right now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just the situation you're in right now. But if you can kind of release part of that, if you can give up your control of the moment, kind of what happened to me with the cancer thing, like it was so overwhelming that I actually was like, at some point, I was just like, I can't do anything about this. Like, there's nothing I can control. I can't decide what the cancer is going to do. I can't decide what the doctors are going to do. I can't decide if the therapy is going to work. I can't decide anything. Like, I have no control at all over this thing. And strangely enough, it was kind of freeing in the moment, like it was like, oh, so basically I can do some things. I can decide, to eat better. I can decide to, try to, or take, work to take these supplements. I can decide to, keep the best attitude that I can get. I can decide, but I can't really control it,
Mhm.
like I can do all those things
You
and I
change
still
all
have
those
no control.
variables, but you're in
Yeah.
that equation and you're what you do control are the inputs, right? Like the inputs
You
into that.
control your inputs, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
give things a chance to work. Somebody asked me one time, "What are you most proud of?" And I said, like having, been through a number of these things. Like, do you take anything? You're proud of anything? And I thought for a minute and I said, yeah, I'm very proud that I never took away from the creator the opportunity to move the universe in my favor. Like
Mhm.
I never decided to control things so much that I took away the creator's opportunity to give me something that I didn't think possible. And I
Yeah.
think that's, I kind of think, I don't, like I said, I don't know, but I kind of think that's the way, like if you're an artist and and you
We let
don't
the
take
muse
away
come
that,
in. We have
yeah,
this
yeah,
idea of this muse, and the muse could be God or universe,
yeah,
and we channel, right? So every
yeah,
great artist has their toolkit of their capability, but they always kinda are they're in subjection to the muse,
yeah,
which is this the download comes from the universe,
yeah,
and we either choose to listen to it or we ignore it. Better artists actually pick up on what the universe has given them,
yeah,
and they find a way to weave it into their world.
yeah.
Then when they do that, it connects. It's like this universal connection, and everybody gets it. You get a
In
beat,
ways that
you get something like that.
if they had worked to control it, they would have never been able to forecast those connections. They would have actually prevented all those connections from happening, right?
Yeah, yeah, you kinda like, you get these people when they don't, you like, you get these massive artists that, like, become, like the Beatles,
Yeah,
you get these people that just hit, and they like, everybody gets it because they did that artist kinda listened to the universe, and a lot of
yeah,
times they'll say, "Well, they try to tell you, "How did it happen?" It's like, "Well, I kinda got a download."
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, a lot, look, man, Da Vinci used to say that, right? And Tesla said that, and
Yeah. Yeah, a
a
lot of
lot of
people say
a lot of
Hendrix used to say that the universe he actually
yeah,
said to the Isley Brothers one time he got this, like he was playing in a session, and he suddenly started playing something totally that wasn't right for the session. They said, "What are you doing? The universe gave me this, I gotta put it down."
yeah,
And
yeah,
Hendrix was famous for putting stuff down like that, and people are
yeah,
like, "Where's that coming from?" "I gotta put it down, it came to me, I gotta put it down."
right,
And he'd be
yeah,
really adamant and say, "Yeah, I don't care if it doesn't fit this moment, that but what you think the moment should be.
yeah,
I I hear this, I gotta get it down."
yeah,
And that's how you get somebody that sounds like that,
yeah.
because he was able to be open to it. When
And
you're open,
I
not
think that's
everybody is open to
available.
that.
That's available for all of us.
Yeah, it definitely is,
Those who have gotten there are accepting of it and don't reject it.
definitely. I
Yeah.
think that you did that. I mean, it happens, it doesn't just happen in music and arts, like, you can get to this point where you can pick up on that, and you go
I've
with
had a
it.
number of things that did not make sense at the time, but you have that, like, that prompting that,
Mhm.
this is the thing to do, like, this is the way it's supposed to work, and, more often than not, that has worked out in positive ways that I could have never imagined, right? Like, better than I had planned for, um, and the times that it doesn't work out well is usually the ones where I try to grab control of it.
Yeah.
And, like, I've determined what the outcome will be because I know what it
Yeah,
should be, so,
yeah,
you
it's
know
like a musician when we wrecked the song
Yeah,
because we just take like, we go and we got it on the 3rd take, and we went and did 100 takes, and
yeah,
the 3rd take was actually the right one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Make sure that's recorded though, because you don't want like, you may never get it back,
Yeah,
Like,
that's the
that's
problem with
yeah,
today's you go and write over it and like, "Oh,
right.
I
Yeah, don't
just
do that.
totally
Yeah.
wrecked myself."
Don't do
But
that.
what like, the time always goes by faster than we think. We hit, like, a little bit over
Yeah,
the
yeah.
hour, but I wanna thank you again for being here, and askandycampbell.com, I wanted to mention, like, if people click on that, what do they find there?
They'll find, a link to my cancer journey, they'll find a link to, the book I wrote, they'll find a link to the supplements that I use, the different books that I read, the kind of the philosophy and the ideas of things that I've used to work through this journey. Kind of everything about me is out there, and so you can sign up for a mail list. But yeah, it's kind of everything is out there.
Well, I wanna let people know that's fully clickable in the podcast description. We were just live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We're gonna be on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon, many other platforms by tomorrow. And I wanna thank you for being a guest on the Fam Electricos podcast.
Now, fam, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. I thoroughly enjoyed it, man. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you.